Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ditch the Spreadsheets Day. I'm just going to quickly share my screen because I have a slide somewhere that I want to share. Here we go. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Is they okay, I hope?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Sometimes you never know. All right. So welcome to Ditch the Spreadsheets Day. This is our lineup for today. Very excited to have Data Courage, Dynamic Budgets, Green Shades, and High Radius with us to share how they can help you ditch the spreadsheets, save some time, and reduce some errors, and just have better insights into your business in different areas. So we are going to kick things off with Data Courage, and I'm excited to have Camille join me and take over and start his presentation. And I will stop sharing. I will let you share your screen, Camille.
Okay.
And then we'll make sure everything is good to go.
Sure.
I'm going to hide my video so I don't
Okie
distract.
doke. I think everything's visible, hopefully.
Yes, we can see it. This looks
Is
good.
the presentation visible?
We can see
Okay.
you. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Hello. Thanks for having us today. My name is Kamil Karbowiak. I'm the managing director at Data Courage. And we would like to show you what we can do to help you ditch the spreadsheets or help you enable a different type of analytics and analysis of your business. So very briefly, I'm just gonna hide the this other. Yes, correct. Okay, so we're in business for 15 years, actually celebrated 15th anniversary this year, and we're present in 5 European locations and West Coast US. We've helped over the course of those years over 650 customers in 30 plus countries. And we like to think that we're helping our customers solve their analytical challenges by doing a lot of different things for them. And we're servicing our customers through partners, and we're valued by our partners for the and customers for the partners and customers facing attitude. So we usually take our customers on a journey from descriptive analytics into more diagnostic, predictive, and even prescriptive analytics. All of that obviously happens with the quantities of data, numbers of data sources that we plug in, and we're strategically trying to push businesses to make those better decisions with which are data-driven and unbiased in many ways. The solutions that we created using Power Stack from Microsoft and also our own algorithms. We have enabled customers with those different solutions, selection of these with the customer's intelligence, item performance analysis, and so on and so forth. Today, I'm going to focus on customer intelligence. We have actually shipped our product, and I'm going to just share our different screen now. Share. Okay, so we have shipped our first solution, AI Customer Intelligence, into the app source recently. With it is a solution for Dynamics Business Central. It's embedded, so it actually helps us identify a lot of information about our customers using machine learning. So what it does when gets get downloaded, It helps classify the clients, classify the customers. It also shows the client migrations between the different classifications. It also can help us see, which customers are about to churn from our business. We can also compare the groups in our solution. And we can go into the customer details, and I'm going to show you this very quickly in action today. We have other solutions as well that we're going to be pushing into the app source in the early 2023. But let's go into a Business Central very quickly. So what we usually have is obviously a lot of figures in Business Central about our customers. So what we did once the app is being loaded into a screen, it shows us the let's just refresh the website, the site before we get into the details. Okay, so what we can see is after we load the extension, there's a number of customers and there's nothing on the customer intelligence sites, and there is nothing yet to be seen. For that, we need to go into the customer card and also go to the customer intelligence script that will then invoke our the API call into our internal script, which then classifies the customers automatically for us. So we can see the clients with the lowest profits, recent, rare, not recent short-term customers that bought something once or twice from us, not recent low spenders that bought something once or twice, not active customers as well. But this is just a sub-selection. This is something that we're going to see on the main screen. And what we can do is with the larger database, if the algorithm decides that there are different groups also to be listed, they will also be showing here on this bigger list. And once we go to the main screen, we already see those groups of customers here. And what we also can see is the probability of customers churning from the business. And we can see that there are 4 with a very high probability. And there's obviously numbers to explain this. And talking about those numbers, if we want to go to, for example, this group here, of course, we can look at the list view. And we can go into the customer itself. And we have another group here showing us several indicators that makes this algorithm to choose that it's actually the one that is buying something from us, rarely that bought something once or twice, depending on the number of transactions that they made with us. But since the recency and frequency of the purchases have been done quite recently from the whole group of customers, we can see that the churn probability here is medium in this instance. Yeah. So with that being said, this is just a part of the algorithm, because it also comes with the customer intelligence application and in the Power BI, and there is a report that shows the different aspects of the customer intelligence, where we can look at the general list of customers with the quantities of those customers locked in time. So we can see if we're losing customers, if we're trending up or downwards. We also have the explanation of the algorithm of the classification of the clustering, and we can also see different groups of customers that are on the higher, on the bigger database. It shows us more groups in essence, allowing us to look at new customers, for example, the ones that churned, the anomalies, in data and things like that. We can, of course, go into the more deeper analysis, and each of the customers, if we want to look at the, for example, anomalies data very quickly, we can go into each of those customers that has been detected as the anomaly, and we can go into the transaction details, where we can see the that you know, in this case we can see some faulty postings because the trade has been also only detected on the return side, and sales is below 0, which obviously should not happen. So probably some faulty postings have been done in the database. Same for the churned customers, and we can of course look at the different saturation of the customers in different groups of time, depending on the loyalty. If we want to know what the loyalty means, we can actually go into the indicators and see, you know, how long has the customer has been with us for, so number of days between the client's first and last purchase. So we can very quickly go into the explanations of the different KPIs that we chose for this dashboard. We can also look at our trend of the customers. So we can see the customers with a high probability of churn. You know, are we growing the numbers in churned customers? What's happening with the best customers on this chart? And so on and so forth. We also can go into the group comparison. So on a scattered plot, we can look at the different selection. Of course, we can look at 2 dimensions most of the time, but with that, we can go into more detailed analysis of profitability, recency of purchases, and how these customers are pushed into those different clusters. And what you can see here is that some of them are very close to each other in this scenario. So we can select both of them and look at the common denominator, and we can see that the frequency of purchases is and the monetary value of those customers is with us. I know we've got only 5 minutes of the time, so I just want to go into the customer migration, so we can look at you know, how our customers weekly are migrating from because our analysis is done weekly or daily, so we can see how are they moving between those different groups. And we also have the key influencers analysis. So what influences the group to be churned, or what influences the group to be in the customer to be in the best customers. And we can see some different key data points that would explain this. We also have the near churn. So even though the customer is in the best customers section, we can see that there are some that needs more attention than the others on this list. And then we of course integrate it with different tools such as Power Platform, Power Apps, and so on. This is just one of the solutions that I wanted to bring to your attention today. So thank you, and yeah, we can open up for questions.
Thanks, Camille, and I will launch your poll as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so everybody can take the poll. Which is your favorite solution to use for your reporting needs?
For the reporting needs.
All right. So look at that. We have a lot of Excel people out there. Hopefully, after seeing what you can offer.
No surprise. No surprise.
Hey, everybody gets used to using that, so you know what happens. But there are easier ways, that's for sure. If you do have any questions, there is a Q&A panel that you can certainly put your questions in there. You can also put them in the chat. We'd be happy to get to them if you have any questions before we move on to our next presenter.
Mhm. Thank you very much.
Just looking to see if we have any questions. How can they reach out to Data Courage if they want more information?
So they can contact us at info@datacourage.com. There's sales@datacourage.com. And yeah, feel free to also discuss any other solutions that I did not have the time to show today.
Yes, and you have a lot of stuff that you can show. So make sure, and we will be sending out the recording to everybody so that you can review this after in case you're not able to see everybody in our lineup today, as well as their contact information so that you can also reach out to them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Data Courage and Camille. And
thank you. Cheers.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen again. So next up is dynamic budgets. And we have Zubin and Tracy that will be joining us. And then following that, we have Green Shades. We have Chris from Green Shades. And then to wrap things up, we'll have Rick from High Radius. So all of them, again, are showing you different ways and different areas of your business that you can ditch the spreadsheets and save time, money, resources, and they do things a little bit quicker and easier for you, which is nice around the holidays, especially. All right. And they did put their contact information in the chat in case you need it to, if you have any questions for Data Courage after today. All right, so let's kick things off. We're going to be, I guess we'll be a little bit ahead of schedule. So if Tracy and Zubin are ready from Dynamic Budgets, we'll get things going on their end.
I am. I can see that Zubin's on the call. Zubin, did you want to kick it off or would you like me to start?
I think we should probably just go right into the video presentation. If you want to just go ahead and tell a little about it, introduce yourself, Tracy.
Sure. So my name is Tracy Kellogg. I am a CPA and the consulting manager for Dynamic Budgets. I've been with the company a little over a year, but I am a long-term customer. I implemented the software in 2 public health agencies in the state of Washington, most recently the 3rd largest in the state of Washington. And at the time I was looking for a budget solution to replace Excel, like many of us. It was too complicated, too onerous, and too easy to break for users. And way back in the day, nobody knew what public health did, so we also didn't have any money. So I needed a cost-effective, user-friendly, and easily installed solution. So that is how I ended up being a customer and then an employee of Dynamic Budgets. So Zubin, the founder, Zubin Gidwani, has created a video since he is traveling today. So Amy, if you could kick that off, that'd be awesome.
Sure. I know we had one poll question that we wanted to launch before. So I'm going to launch that now, basically asking you if you're still using Excel for budgeting. And it looks like almost everybody is. So hopefully after watching this video, you'll see that there's some easier time consuming. It could be a lot easier and less time consuming this way. So let me launch the video. Give me a second, because sometimes it can be a little finicky. All right. And here's the video. Let me pause it because I think I have to share.
And Amy, that reminder that you go to the more function and then hit share sound.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, where did I see that again? More, oh, here we go.
It only shows up once you're sharing your screen.
Am I sharing my screen? It says I am.
You are.
Okay, I thought so. But it's not showing me that. Pause recording. It was there yesterday. Why isn't it there now? Hold on 1 second. You guys can see the video though, right?
Correct.
All right. Why isn't it why doesn't it let me share? Here we go. Use this one. Nope.
I think you just have to hit the play button.
Okay.
And did you hit once it's playing, if you go down to your more on your meeting controls, you should have share sound.
And it was there yesterday, Zubin. What the heck's going on? It like disappeared. I'm
Okay.
still trying. Wait, hold on. What does this say? Audio settings. Nope. Nope. I download the video. I put it on my desktop. I'm just going to pause sharing for a minute. Let's see. We even tested this yesterday and it worked fine. I'm just going to stop sharing. Maybe if I stop, it will work. And then reshare. Share screen. And here's my video. And then hit more. And it's still not there.
Great.
Why did it work yesterday and not
Okay.
today?
Okay, backup plan. Tracy, do you want to just walk through the slides and then just give a brief explanation of some of the core data entry screens and call it a day?
I can do that. So Amy, why don't you start it? And if we don't have audio, I'll just talk through it as we go on.
Okay. Like I said, we
maybe
tested this yesterday. I don't know why it's not working.
Okay. So, Amy, maybe you can go ahead and pause this sort of slide transitions for Tracy, and then we'll jump into the demo after that.
Amy, what
So,
happens if you hit autoplay?
where's autoplay?
Over to the ellipsis. Yeah, where you were, options menu, the
Right
three
here?
dots.
Okay.
Oops. Yeah. What?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. So do you want to go ahead and try it? And then if we're not getting
Sure.
audio, then I will talk through it. And we're not getting audio. So, the whole reason Zubin developed this software and I implemented it and many of our customers implemented it, it was just taking way too much time to create annual spreadsheets for the budget, plus keep them from breaking or fix them when they were broken. So Zubin was at a very large company on Maui where he was dealing with 600 or more spreadsheet tabs to do his budget, and it was taking so much time and he couldn't find a solution. So he developed his own. So next slide, please. So here's Zubin's background. As I alluded to, he had a lot of spreadsheets and he was building things. If you could pause, Amy, for this slide, please.
Sure.
So I was customer number 3, and Zubin never lets me forget that I had the nerve to go on vacation when we first implemented it. The cool thing was implementation only takes a couple of hours. And then all I had to do was train my manager. I went on a family vacation for my mother's 80th birthday and came back and everything was working super well. I trained everybody individual. This was about 10 managers, 20 departments. I trained everybody individually, and I also created a video, and then people could pretty much work on their own after that. Next slide, please. So again, we're talking about efficiency. The time that you spend on your Excel-based budgeting, creating the workbooks, sending them, retrieving all the data, checking everybody's errors or broken links. My boss loved to break my spreadsheets. And then getting that data into your ERP and validating the data just eats up a lot of time that none of us have. So next slide, please, Amy. So one of the things that ate up a lot of my time is I had to run an entire year or multiple years worth of detailed transactions for managers to look at. So I was eating up a lot of time doing that. For non-GP users, I had to export it to a PDF. I couldn't restrict managers from seeing maybe things that they shouldn't see, like payroll expenses or other departments. So I was looking something where people could pretty much self-service rather than having to have me or another finance person do that work. Next slide, please. So with dynamic budgets, we have this budget dashboard. You can rename it however you want. Right now we have this menu items that says enter your budget here. And maybe Amy, roll the video and I can just talk over it. So this allows you to select your budget entry form that you can design. You can search by your org unit or department. You can search by your object or some account tags and that kind of thing. And what your users are going to see is we set this form up so you can see 2020 actuals, 2020 budget, and then enter your proposed budgets where you drill down on the account number to put your line item assumptions. And then we have some comparatives, variances. It also allows you to make notes or have your user make notes. So this is a drill down on your training where the first assumption is that they are putting in CPR training, $500 a month. You can actually in the lower grid see your comparatives from actuals. You can drill down to the actual transaction details that are in your ERP system. Either by month or by year. You can see any previous budgets that you choose to display or other previous years of actuals that you want to display. You can, if you choose to use this, you can have your users assign an edit status and approval status. So you can kind of keep track of where people are at in their budgeting process. Here's where you can add notes. In this case, we ask people to explain variances over $2,500. And as you save the budget, the comments history will keep showing the comments. So you may not have to drill down into each individual account to find out what people were thinking because you could use this comments field. That's totally discretionary. You can use or not use that as you choose. Another way you can enter budgets is to do this basic budget entry form where you're inputting the budget at a higher level by month, by account. You can also do that same detail entry by drilling down on those blue hyperlinks if you choose, and you can turn that on or off depending on what you want your folks to do. This is your budget dashboard. This is more where you're managing the budget. You can see the edit status, you can see the approval status, you can see any comments that were added, and you can see who last touched and updated the line item. On the reporting side, and I'm going to wait for the video to catch up. You have this, just what Zubin calls a plain vanilla report, which is a single budget ID. And when we say budget ID, we are talking about either a budget or actual. In these pop-outs, you can search for those budget IDs or org units or objects, account codes, and it's going to return you a single budget ID. Again, you can drill down on actuals or budget line items by clicking the blue hyperlink or right-clicking in any dollar amount. If your users want to access the monthly actuals without doing those drill downs, you can actually pull it from this monthly actual transaction review and you will see all the transactions. This can take a little time if you're doing the whole agency. So sometimes we recommend people just select a single org unit or program or department. Again, these are all those, if you saw that flash of the pop out, you can make your selections for org units by groups of org units or single org unit or anything like that. So in this report, it allows you to compress or expand the level of detail and subtotals. And the way that was done was by dragging the column header up into the dark gray area. And then you can expand and contract either the entire report with display level, or as the video is showing, just select a single account to expand. If you're seeing something odd, like why is airfare and rent expense, you can either copy or export to Excel, send it off to your finance folks and say, hey, this doesn't look like it's properly classified. If you have a budget and you're ready to start a new budget year and you want your base budget to be a copy of your previous year's approved budget, you can copy over the budget identically from the prior budget and then start making your changes in the new budget. I also use this if I was doing budget amendments where I wanted to keep my approved board budget the same and show the changes between the two versions. If you are using our payroll module, you can also copy all the payroll information over to your new budget. And I'm waiting for it to catch up. When you finish your budget and you want to send it to your ERP, it's live linked. So you go to the export function, you select your source budget ID. You can do it by org unit or by object or the whole thing. You select all your accounts that you want to export, pick your ERP budget that's set up in GP, give yourself a little information about what the export is if you're doing it multiple times, and then just click export. And it's virtually 5 seconds to do the export to your ERP. We do have various methods if you're doing allocations. So we have various methods to allocate or create custom worksheets to calculate maybe percentage increase of revenue or something like that that's calculated automatically to bring into the budget. here's all the, we do have a payroll function as well. And we're just going to briefly show you the user permissions, which is where you can set users so that they maybe only have access to some features, but they don't have admin access, or they only have certain permissions to certain companies or certain org units or programs or departments, depending on what you call them. You can restrict that. You can restrict it to read only. You can restrict it to read write. You can allow access to payroll, not access to payroll. And so this would be an impersonating a user where you see there's nothing on the right-hand side with the admin fees, but or the administration features, but they do have access to reports and budget entry. Now you can see this person does not have budget access to all org units or programs. They only have access to 2. We can even restrict it. Sensitive details means they can see, for example, all the payroll by person. In this case, we've restricted it so they can only see certain accounts. You can turn these on or off if you choose to go to that level of data restriction. So we will, we'll extend an offer for a free 30-day trial. It usually takes us approximately 2 hours to implement. And please contact us if you have any other questions. You can also reach us at info@dynamicbudgets.com.
Well, that was awesome. You know, even though we had a little snafu there, we still still went really well. Thank you, Tracy.
Technology, gotta love it.
Yeah, I don't even understand. Like I said, it worked fine for us yesterday. I just don't even know why it's not there anymore. It's very bizarre. Zoom. All right, but I know we have a few poll questions that we wanted to launch as well. So let me launch those now. How long does your budget process take? And hopefully you're doing some research on some tools that can help you, like dynamic budgets, to save you some time in that budget process. So it looks like a few people have 30 days, a few people have 60, and a few people have 90. All right, next one. Do you forecast? And which do you forecast? If you can only pick one, which one is it? Okay, and it looks like a lot of you do a year-end estimate, and a couple are to say budgets are so painful we can't imagine having to do it.
But with dynamic budgets, forecasting is super, super easy. You can do combinations of actuals compared to actuals with budget, actuals with an average, actuals with last year. So it's a pretty cool tool.
And last but not least, what do you consider the most painful part of budgeting? Sorry, there are no all of the above options. Is there any specific part of your budgeting that's more painful than others? A lot of people are saying pulling your staff's teeth to get their inputs.
We've all been there.
And that seems like to be the number one answer, besides one workbook collection consolidation. So thank you everyone for sharing. I feel like budgeting, especially this time of year, everybody's really trying to get everything done, get their end of year numbers in as best they can, and getting everybody updated on all that. So I'm sure it's can be a little bit stressful for anybody at this time of year. Besides doing if you're on GP, year-end updates. So if there's no other questions.
So Amy, I just want to add really quick. So right
Sure.
now we're live linked to GP, but we have one customer on Acumatica. We are working to get that live linked in early 23. My last agency, I actually didn't have either one of those. So Zubin was able to set up a data exchange to allow us to pull in actuals.
Nice.
So don't be caught up in it only works with GP because we're expanding on a daily basis.
Yes, yes. So if you are on GP, we've got you covered with dynamic budgets. If you're moving to another ERP, they can help you there too. So are there any questions before we move on to green shades? Quiet group today. That's for sure. I'm still want to see if there's a way to, nope. I still keep checking the more buttons just to see if it changes, but it doesn't. Video snafus always. Again, you can put your Q&A questions in the Q&A or in the chat. We'll be happy to answer those. And everybody's contact information will be in the chat as well in case you need it. And again, we'll be sending out the recording to everybody with everybody's contact information so that you'll have that, as well as a link to the recording. All right. Well, thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, everybody.
All right, we're going to be a little bit ahead schedule, so that's good. I did leave 5 minutes in between everybody, just in case there were questions that we would have some time to answer them. If there aren't any questions, then we certainly can move on and make things go a little bit faster for everyone to give you some time back in your day. But please don't hesitate to ask any questions because we did allot some time for that. So next up, I'm going to introduce Chris from Green Shades. And I will stop sharing, Chris, if you're there.
Yeah, hey there.
Hey, Chris.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you should be able to share your screen.
All right, perfect. Let me go ahead and do that.
I bet this is a busy time of year for you guys too, with all the year-end stuff going on.
Yeah, you know, it certainly is in the payroll and tax world. A lot happening this time of year, and also budgeting season for us. So it was a great presentation that we all just got to see. It's certainly top of mind for us right now. It's basically all the meetings that I've had this morning have been all related to budgeting. So budgeting and taxes, you know, that's what we're focused on right now. All right, I just pulled my screen up.
Yep.
Is that coming through?
Yeah, you look good. You're good to go.
Okay, perfect. So, well, first of all, thanks, Amy, for having us today, and thanks everybody for your time and joining today's discussion. Interesting topic for sure as we, look to kind of rethink some of the ways that maybe we've historically been using Excel and spreadsheets, and as indicated earlier on the reporting poll, a lot of people still use spreadsheets, and myself included. There's certainly nothing wrong with that, but any opportunities we can kind of get away from using spreadsheets to maybe use more of a purpose, kind of purpose-driven software, something like that, that sometimes is a better bet. So what we're primarily going to be talking about today, with kind of in the world of green shades, we deal primarily with payroll and HR and taxes, everything around ultimately getting employees paid. That's really what it's all about for green shades, making sure employees are paid timely and accurately. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today is really not too much about green shades directly, but more so just about as we're thinking about payroll, getting our employees paid, and certainly as we're gearing up for the year-end tax season, just really understanding kind of what some of the most common mistakes are. There are, many opportunities throughout the payroll process and within taxes as well to really kind of dive in and use Excel spreadsheets. But, there's kind of a time and place for that. So we're going to talk through that here just a little bit. So let's see. Oh, there's a nice big picture of myself right here. So so just a little bit about me. I've probably certainly I know from the panelist side, I've worked with many of you before, and as far as all the attendees on today's call, I've probably worked with many of you in the past as well. So I joined Green Shades back in 2009. So I guess 13 or so years now. And really since then, really been focused on payroll, HR, and taxes. I do have a bit of background in finance and payroll prior to coming to Green Shades. So not exactly, what Tracy was saying earlier as far as being a user, but I can certainly user of Green Shades in my case. I wasn't using Green Shades prior to coming over to Green Shades, but certainly was dealing with payroll and taxes and working with some other applications out there. So I've enjoyed every minute being at Green Shades, and it's always great working within the Microsoft Dynamics community that we get to work in all the time. At this point, my role, I oversee kind of our revenue strategy and operations. I've had a lot of different roles over the years. We were a much smaller company when I joined in 2009. So I had the opportunity to kind of wear a lot of different hats, and that's kind of continued throughout the years. But what has not changed is really, as boring as it may seem to some people, my passion for payroll and compliance and taxes. It's I really enjoy getting to help companies avoid IRS penalties and compliance concerns, and just ultimately try to help avoid some headaches. I'm presenting today from our office in Jacksonville, Florida, where we literally have a couple million forms that are ready to be printed. Our mail service team is gearing up as we're getting ready to print and mail over 2 million tax forms here in January. So the office that I typically work out of, I've been booted out of, and I'm in a small office down the hall so that my office could be converted into a printing shop along with everything else within this building. So that's really, again, this time of year, that's really what we're focused on with our customers, is trying to again help them meet year-end compliance needs. So as we're thinking about payroll, taxes, compliance, and when we're thinking about really where spreadsheets come into play, again, what we want to focus on today are really just some of the most common causes of payroll errors. That could be because, certainly could be scenarios where people are just making simple mistakes, or maybe perhaps don't know what they're doing. But a lot of times, people have the right intent, they have an understanding of what they're doing, but it's really, really easy to make mistakes along the way, especially, when you're not really using the right kind of application to help you out. So one of the first things I wanted to touch on here is really around the misclassification of employee types. So, I can kind of mention this here to a certain degree, that whether or not you directly are involved in, paying your employees, maybe you run payroll in-house, maybe you outsource payroll, whatever that might be, this is something that really can impact every employee. So in part, what we're talking about here with the misclassification of employee type is related to, hey, is this an employee that is salaried and really they don't need to be tracking their time? And as I'm sure many of us relate to, you could be a salaried employee and you could be working 6 hours a day or 16 hours a day. And for the most part, your paycheck remains the same. So there are many jobs that can be classified as that. There are also other jobs where certainly you should not be classifying an employee that way. They should not be considered salary. They should be eligible for overtime, whether it's more than 40 hours in a work week or 8 hours in a day. And there's all sorts of state regulations out there that have additional complex requirements. But then beyond that, even too, when we're thinking about misclassification of employee types, even just the whole concept of, is somebody technically an employee or not? And that's been something, especially in the last few years, that's been a really big conversation topic as we talk about the gig economy and all of these folks that kind of have multiple jobs or kind of doing a side hustle and all of that. And there's that constant debate of, hey, the individual that's is bringing me my food that I ordered from a local restaurant, is that individual an employee of that delivery company? Are they a contractor? So those are can be really sticky situations. So again, even if you say, hey, I ultimately know how to compensate this individual correctly, it's still really easy to get it wrong from the start if that simple classification of, hey, are they an employee or a vendor, if that's done incorrectly, or are they salaried, or should they be overtime eligible? So as we get into employees who really should be overtime eligible, that's really especially where that risk can come into play when you're using an Excel spreadsheet, for example, for tracking time and trying to do some of those overtime calculations on your own. And so that feeds kind of right into inaccurate hours tracking. So again, for those employees who are hourly, for those employees who need to be clocking in, clocking out, there's a lot of really complexities that go into this. So obviously having the employee clock in and clock out, okay, you can do that. But then what hours should they actually be clocking in for? So, I drove just last week, drove a couple hours away for a training conference that I went to. It was really interesting and some good information there, but I was because this is the kind of stuff that I think about. I was thinking about while I was driving there and coming back, I was thinking, okay, well, if I were an hourly employee, which I'm not, but if I were an hourly employee, should I be getting compensated for this time? And that's a question that is a rather complex question, because depending on the nature of that travel and depending on what you're specifically doing while you're traveling, the answer can vary. And so again, regardless of intent, kind of going into it, there can be a lot of complexities that you can get into, even when you have the right software in place for tracking an employee's time. There's still the question of, okay, are these hours actually in fact hours they should be getting paid for, or is this something that is more considered voluntary time, holiday event or something like that, some kind of company event, maybe where their attendance is not mandatory. And so again, that's something, and for me, I can speak firsthand that prior to coming to Green Shades, a lot of my background dealing with payroll and HR was in the restaurant and hospitality space. And so that's something where there's always complexities that you're dealing with there of, okay, is this employee, should they be on the clock right now, or they're taking a break, or maybe they are a server and it's kind of slow, so they're just hanging out for a little bit. Maybe they're just rolling silverware and doing things like that, but they're not actually getting many tips. There's a lot of complexities that can go into that. So the last thing you want to do is have to deal with those complexities, and then also then be trying to track something like their hours worked and labor on a spreadsheet. And then of course, inaccurate calculation. So this is really where, when we're talking about trying to keep up with something maybe more manually or using some kind of software, which is especially a little bit more common in smaller businesses. So most of the companies that we work with here at Green Shades I would consider more mid-size companies, maybe 200 employees, 300 employees, a couple thousand employees. Of course, it varies, but there's especially a lot of small businesses out there that are trying really hard to make ends meet. And they're trying to accomplish everything in Excel, for example, instead of using a software application that's really designed for this. But when you're thinking about calculating an employee's paycheck and ensuring that you're paying them, accurately and timely, there's a lot of complexities when you're dealing with overtime. So again, and those regulations can vary at the federal versus the state level. So that's certainly a complexity. But then also, kind of pay differentials. So when you're thinking about employees that might be working an overnight shift or a weekend shift, or, this time of year with all the the various holidays, when companies might be closed, is there going to be a premium offered to an employee when they're working on Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Day or whatever that might look like? So that is something that you really need to make sure that is tracked very meticulously, because that will, of course, have an impact. If the employee should be paid a premium for working a particular shift, that additional premium needs to be factored into those overtime calculations, for example. And then, of course, as it says here, the misapplication of nexus and reciprocity rules, which basically what that means for anybody that doesn't follow this stuff with a passion. In the last few years, if we haven't noticed, so many employees are now working remotely. So we've gone from these kind of centralized offices within organizations, including here at Green Shades, when everybody was basically in the same office, to now we have employees literally all over the country. And so trying to, of course, keep up with that, have an understanding of where your employees, are living and then in fact working. But there are a lot of rules out there between different states that basically say, hey, if an employee is living in this state, but they cross state lines to go work in a different state, that will have an impact on unemployment taxes and withholding taxes. And then sometimes there are special agreements between different states where they say, hey, you know what, if you're working in our state, but you're living in a different state, no problem, just withhold taxes in the other state, or vice versa. And so, of course, it's really important to obviously partner with an organization that is familiar with all those things, because that gets, very, very complicated. And of course, as we're thinking about this, just in terms of the overall kind of impact of this, again, when we're thinking about our workforce, whether they are employees or they maybe even if they're, contractors that you're working with, small errors can have really, really large impacts, and they can have immediate impacts. So, the other thing that we've kind of seen over the last couple of years, of course, with the Great Resignation and all these kind of employees that are leaving their companies and going elsewhere, and in some cases then turning into boomerang employees, in some cases where they'll then eventually return to the company that they first left. But regardless, it's been a very challenging time to hire workers and retain workers. And so when we're in scenarios where we're making errors, wrongly calculated paycheck, for example, that of course has an impact on the payroll team that needs to work with this employee to get those corrected. But there's also a significant impact to that worker. Many employees live paycheck to paycheck. I think we have some of the stats perhaps in the slide deck. But it's really staggering when you think about that. And so the impact of an employee missing a paycheck is massive. And I said that, I really am passionate about working with our customers to help ensure that doesn't happen to their employees, because that is way back when. That's really how I got started in all of this, was that I worked for a restaurant that, in hindsight, looking at now, they had some really bad practices that were in place. And this was before, this was while I was still in college, and ultimately, graduated with my degree in finance and then in restaurant and hotel management. But at that time, I didn't really understand all the rules and regulations, but, they were giving employee paychecks that were bouncing. I mean, you couldn't even go cash it to the bank. You're literally running across the street to the closest bank to try to get them to cash that immediately before the bank account of the restaurant was overdrawn. And then that eventually led me to file a claim with the state of Alabama's Department of Labor. And now I, realize, okay, there's a lot of people out there that need help, with these kind of things. But, when you treat an employee that way, whether intentional or not, that's going to, of course, hurt the worker morale, but they're going to, it's going to hurt the employer brand as well, because they're going to be telling their friends all about it. And there wasn't any kind of social media back then when that happened to me, but I'm sure that that happens now. People will be real quick to post about that on whatever their preferred social media platform is. Okay, so I'm kind of jumping into some of this already, but there are kind of current conditions that make this even more impactful. So, we could be having this conversation 5 years ago, and so much of this would still be, of course, applicable. FLSA regulations and overtime and these compliance concerns, these things have always been around. These things are not new, but the last few years have been obviously very unusual. And so even more so than in the past, workers have been very stressed. Everybody's been very stressed for a long time. Things are still in a weird place. And so when we're looking at, as it says here, the number of employees and Americans that live paycheck to paycheck, it's really staggering. So that is one of the reasons that when we do make an error, when we are processing payroll or getting somebody paid, it can have a really significant impact. Beyond that, beyond just kind of the stress that workers are in, if they're especially living paycheck to paycheck, you can't turn on the news right now without getting notifications about inflation and the economy and this, and there's so much concern out there related to these things right now. So not only, is that all things as kind of employers and business professionals that we need to be aware of as we're thinking about strategies going into the new year and that sort of thing, but all of those discussions, they impact everybody, whether someone's in a leadership role or not. They are thinking about the economy. They're stressed out. They see companies going through layoffs, et cetera. And so, people are just, people are stressed. People are at a place where they are, very vulnerable to any kind of issues that might come across. So it's, more important than ever to make sure that they're supported. And then here was just some stats. Really, all I wanted to note right here, again, some super interesting stats, and hopefully everybody will have a chance to kind of look through the slide deck in detail. But the biggest thing here is that there's a lot of employees that receive a paycheck with errors, and then B, these same employees kind of as a result, they're quite likely to then quit their job after hitting some type of issue like that. Again, especially in a market where they feel like, hey, they can get any other job, very quickly, depending on what kind of industry you're in too. Of course, you might have higher or lower turnover. So it can be, quite costly when you make even just one error, how quickly that can impact that employee's, tenure with the organization, and how quickly they can end up leaving. And of course, replacing workers is extremely costly. We've all experienced that before. Average time to fill rates vary, of course, based on industry. But again, we've all experienced these scenarios where an employee unexpectedly leaves, and then, how long it actually takes to, of course, not only fill that role, but then, of course, get that employee to a place where they are actually producing, for so much of their first year in the job. It's really, them just trying to figure things out. Unless, of course, in the example of Tracy, who spoke a moment ago, who was, of course, already very familiar with the company. But, in many circumstances, of course, that's not the situation. So, and so when we're thinking about this too, the other side of this is just kind of the raw cost of this. So, again, on the heels of what we just talked about with the budgeting side of things, as we're looking ahead to our personnel costs in the new year and in 2023, we're thinking about these turnover costs. It can be extremely costly. So not only, the kind of the lack of productivity from that employee when you're, without that employee or looking to replace that employee, but then literally just the actual recruiting costs and the, onboarding costs, the orientation costs, training, et cetera. So depending on how much turnover you have, and depending on, kind of the salary of that employee, you can see in this example right here for a 500 employee company, you can be really, looking at some significant, significant fees. I mean, these are, or not fees, but I mean costs, to the organization. So really can be really, really costly to make errors. And then so as we're again thinking about costly and errors, the other side of this, again, whether we're talking about paying employees or even if we're thinking about vendors and 1099s, and hey, we're entering that season in January where we need to be issuing 1099s to all of our vendors, and then reporting all of this to the IRS. Whether we're dealing with that or we're dealing with getting employees paid, our workforce paid, there are significant costs that can impact the business when we start dealing with penalties, and these things can just skyrocket. And really, what you have to kind of keep in mind, and I always tell people when we're thinking about this and when we're thinking about penalties to an organization, the revenue source to the IRS, from businesses is massive. I mean, obviously, not only do they need that tax revenue, but they are ultimately expecting there to be a large chunk of penalties as well that are going to be assessed. And so that's a significant revenue source to the federal government. And so that is something that, the IRS isn't going to be holding back. They're going to be, looking to make sure that businesses pay them what they believe they are owed, or they are owed according to the IRS tax code. So it's critical that, we do really everything by the book to try to avoid those things. And then, finally, really just kind of all of it sort of just being summarized right here. Again, when we're in a position to where we are trying workarounds, and whether that's using some kind of software that's maybe more designed for a small business, but it's not really capable of doing what a mid-sized business needs, or if it's something like using a spreadsheet where we're saying, okay, we're going to try to track all of our taxes manually after we run payroll, and maybe once a month or once a quarter try to calculate things out on an Excel spreadsheet and go out to the state website to go out and pay our unemployment taxes or whatever that might be. It's certainly possible to do things that way. It's not to say that no business is able to do that, but there's a huge potential for just human error there. Of course, with as nice as Excel spreadsheets are, it's really easy to just miskey a formula, and that can mess up things quite a bit. So the more automation that can be provided, the better off you can be. So, of course, from Green Shades, there's a lot that we can do to help with this. Our clients range in size, they range in industry, and they kind of range in scale of sort of how they're using Green Shades. Some of them are using us very specifically, hey, I want you to manage our tax forms and distribute our tax forms at year end. And then we have other companies that really everything for their employee life cycle from hire to retire is managed within Green Shades, their entire workforce and all of their taxes and their payroll processing and everything. So it ultimately, we can kind of be whatever partner we need to be to an organization. But what we do pride ourselves on bringing to the table is, automated compliance, because that is going to bring that peace of mind, ensuring that the taxes and the tax codes and tax policies are always up to date, ensuring everything is compliant from a reporting standpoint, and and really just having these opportunities to solve for some of these challenges in a stress-free way, including even things like the Affordable Care Act, which are not discussed as much as they were in some years in the past, but is still a really really big thing that employers are trying to solve for. And then especially as we're looking ahead to the new year and we're thinking about new hires that we might be bringing on board. I know at Green Shades right now we're hiring for some different roles, and we're excited to have these new hires come on board. And we have some new folks that just started this week. And the really big thing that we're focused on internally, of course, is making sure that new hire experience is as great as possible. We really want to make sure that employee first day, first week just says, wow, this is a fantastic place to work. And we want to make sure that our clients have that same kind of experience. So ensuring that, that onboarding process can be smooth, both on the employer side for all of us on the call today, but then also for these employees that are getting hired into an organization. And so we can do that all digitally at scale and hosted cloud environments to where everything can be done electronically, and just simplifying that process quite a bit. So in closing, just to wrap up here, and then of course, if there's any questions, we have time for that. So happy to answer any questions that anybody has. But as we're looking at Green Shades versus anything else that's on the market, of course, there's a lot of different companies out there, a lot of really good companies out there that can offer a lot of different solutions. But really what we pride ourselves on is, hey, we've been in the dynamic space, been around as a company for 20 years now, in the Microsoft Dynamics space for that entire time. We are built for mid-market companies, and we say hardworking mid-market companies. We have so many clients within sort of the light industrial sector, for example, but then also staffing and transportation and healthcare and construction. These companies that some of whom have been hit really hard over the last few years, and we're excited to hopefully make their day-to-day lives a little bit easier. Really focus on employee engagement, but of course, compliance and customer support being at our core. So we have in-house support, something we provide to all of our customers, and we're always going to continue to be here to assist. So hopefully that was helpful. Got the sales@greenshades.com. Of course, if you need any additional information. But outside of that, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to address those, whether they're related to payroll and tax compliance or related to green shades. Happy to assist in any way we can.
Now, I know you guys have a lot of resources out there too on your website to help anybody during this time of year too.
Yeah, definitely at go.greenshades.com. We've got a lot of resources that are out there. And I would say, I think that, one of the questions that we get a lot of times this year that I'll just mention in case anybody's thinking about this, especially as we're talking about, with the tax filing season that's coming up, sometimes the question is, okay, when do we have to sign up for Green Shades, or when do we have to let Green Shades know that we kind of want Green Shades to help with the tax form printing? And I always say, I mean, it's a pretty quick turnaround on our side. Typically, in order for us to, guarantee, so when we're thinking about like W-2s and 1099 tax forms that need to get mailed out in January, typically those have to be due postmarked by the end of January. And so normally around like January 26th or so, as long as you release those forms to us by then, our team will, turn those around quickly. And like I said, we've got a massive operation here that I was proud to lead for a number of years. I selfishly, I will say I'm glad I'm not leading the team anymore because it's a heck of a January, but
I'm sure.
especially the first year of COVID, that was a wild one. But I think that it's not something that you have to give, huge advance notice for. So I don't want anybody to think that just because we're, well into December at this point, that it's too late for Green Shades to help with year-end services. We're here and we'll be here whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. So yes, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A section of the panel, and we can certainly answer those. And we'll be sharing all this information in the recording email that goes out, so you have it, and you can certainly reach out to them at a later date as well. And I appreciate it, Chris. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having us.
All right. So we are going to wrap things up with our final ISV, or I should say independent software vendor, if you don't know what ISV means, but we are going to wrap it up with HighRadius, and we have Rick joining us from HighRadius to share how he can help you ditch the spreadsheets.
Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome, Rick.
Okay, I was going to start my video, but it won't let me.
Yeah,
So I'll just
even
share
it
my
won't
screen.
let you share your video at all.
Now it says limited by host, so maybe that's the.
Because I have
problem.
multiple participants can share.
Yeah.
Advanced
It
sharing
wouldn't-
options.
Yep, you cannot start your video because the host is stopped. That's all right. We'll just go with what we got.
All right. Well, I guess this video, I have to look into that video then for Zoom and see what's going on.
So just want to say thanks for everybody's time attending this. This happens to be an area I'm really passionate about. The topic is 5 reasons why you should ditch your spreadsheet. And my name is Rick Rotowski. I'm part of the product management team at HighRadius. HighRadius provides an autonomous finance platform for automating order-to-cash, treasury, and record-to-report processes within the office of the CFO by applying artificial intelligence and machine learning. HighRadius focuses on automation on the office of the CFO, and that requires elimination of spreadsheets in specific situations. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And so before we get into the details, I want to provide a framework for considering when to ditch the spreadsheet, and then provide examples of when and where to apply that. Because, first time somebody says ditch the spreadsheet, I'm an accountant, and my first reaction is, don't take that away from me. But there are cases when it's inappropriate, and I think we've seen this happen over time. And what we're looking at is just a timeline of spreadsheets, right? In 1978, VisiCalc came along. It was the first spreadsheet. Interestingly, I had VisiCalc I ran it on an Atari 800, which was a gaming machine, and it wasn't on a disk, it was on a game cartridge. And prior to that, we used 13 column paper. And we would, the value of 13 column paper was I would do the forecast and I would know every number, right? Because I calculated it manually. And you go into a meeting and somebody'd ask a question and you'd have the answer because you knew every number. And now you don't, because it's a bunch of Excel formulas and you're like, well, wait a minute, let me look that up. But VisiCalc was first, and then Multiplan came along, and that was a Microsoft product. Shortly after that, Lotus 1-2-3 came along, and these were all, when you went from VisiCalc, you're like, I got to learn Multiplan. Is it that much better? Yes, it was. Was Lotus that much better? Yes, it was. And then Excel kind of came out and changed the game, and they changed the game by combining graphics, so you could do a lot more things, and you could do a lot more data management. Then in 2005, Google Sheets came out. In 2007, Apple jumped into the foray with their Apple Numbers and their iWork platform. And I should add, along this time, there were all kinds of spreadsheet products coming out, not just these. These were just the big ones. And if we look at really from 1978 to 2007, and even through to 2015, spreadsheets have become the glue that hold together multiple applications. They hold together ERP to CRM, and ERP to expense reporting, and ERP to other data, because the ERP applications really are designed to account for things and capture things, but they don't necessarily help you manage all of that. And so when we think about the use case for spreadsheets, and I said, look, some of it is valid. The first use case is ad hoc analysis. Perfect use for spreadsheets. You need to do it, you crunch the numbers, you come up with the totals. The second use case is really, I'll call operational planning. And that's where departments use it, and they may plug in, they may get some information from an ERP system on number of deliveries in the next week, or the weight of some stuff to be shipped, and they plug it in the spreadsheet and it gives them an answer and they act accordingly. And that's operational planning. If you look at the operational planning extends to budgeting, which we saw earlier today with dynamic budgets, and there's really systems for that. If somebody's doing it in Excel or a spreadsheet, I mean, the wheels fall off very rapidly. And then the third use case, which is what I'm going to focus on, is really about subsystems being built in spreadsheets. And again, that's where, when we get to 2015, that really starts, getting a little into gray areas, because we got cloud-based systems that we have to interface to now. And the cloud-based systems are a big benefit, because it used to be you had on-premise systems, and if you wanted to do an upgrade, you maybe did it once every 2 or 3 years, because it was so painful. And now with cloud systems, you can do it, month or quarterly, and it's pretty transparent. And then that evolved to where into intelligent software, into this last category. And this is kind of a new area where, because it's facilitated because of cloud-based systems, it's facilitated because of all of these spreadsheet subsystems out there where people are trying to make intelligent decisions. And now with the advent of artificial intelligence, we can do that. And so that's kind of the timeline of where this happens. And again, we're focusing on, and HighRadius focuses on that third category of, ditch the spreadsheet for that third use case, which is all these subsystems out there. And we're going to talk about the subsystem of accounts receivable, not just applying cash, but the whole subsystem of that. And we have, HighRadius does other things. I mentioned Treasury, the whole cash forecasting process. We also have something to help in the financial close, which is also generally spreadsheet intensive. And so that's where we're going to go. And again, how do companies do it now? They have an ERP application. Anything not done by the ERP, they do it with a spreadsheet. And if you think of this in the context of routine tasks, like invoicing and cash application, they're done in the ERP, but the whole management process of what happens if somebody doesn't pay, I have to done them. What happens, I need to validate that my customers have a valid credit score, that they have the ability to pay. That's all outside of ERP. What about prioritizing my collection process for slow pays? That's all done outside of ERP. And it's all typically done in spreadsheets. And so that's the area we're going to kind of really drill in on, just to give you an idea of how you can eliminate this with the spreadsheets. So, 5 reasons you should ditch the spreadsheets. And if you think about these subsystems, many of them have been built by someone in the operational department. They split their time between doing their day job and trying to automate their day job. And they have a propensity for spreadsheets and CSV files and things. The general problem with these subsystems is they're fragile. The person who built them may have done a good job and was promoted, is no longer around, and the system is what I call dead. No one knows how to change it or where to fix it. So that's kind of the umbrella problem. And then we get into the mechanics, and it's almost like when you think of these subsystems, is a spreadsheet a blessing or a curse? It's a blessing because you can get it done. But these are kind of the curse, right? First of all, mechanics. You spend more time exporting data, then importing it into a spreadsheet. And it may be, in the case of credit, it may be 5 or 6 pieces of data. It's the customer information. It's the external information like Dun & Bradstreet and things like that. It's the payment history. It's the correspondence history every month. So you got to adjust your data. You got to adjust your formulas. You got to adjust your calculations. And that gets into the accuracy problem. What happens if you don't? What happens if you make a mistake? And, there's examples of that you can look out on the web, but the one we talk about is there was a Canadian power generation company called TransAlta that identified a $24 million error because somebody cut and pasted the wrong area. And so, mechanics, accuracy, timeliness go with it as well, because a lot of times once it's in Excel, upper management thinks it's easy. And so they want things quickly. And they don't realize all the peddling going on under the hood to have it happen. And these 3 things are kind of a lethal combination when you're trying to have 100% accuracy and have it as quick as possible with a lot of mechanics. It's just a problem. The 4th challenge is control, and that is these spreadsheets take on a life of their own. And people edit the formulas, and you don't know about the formulas that have been editing. So you think things are fine and things are in balance. In reality, they're not. And so just this whole control process of decentralized ownership of templates, you're not sure what the numbers represent anymore. And then the last piece is efficiency. And this kind of, efficiency runs across all of this because, again, somebody says, hey, this is great. I just need you to add 1 column. And you go to add 1 column and you can't because it's a lot of work. And so those are the 5 reasons. And if we look at a use case, and again, we're looking at the accounts receivable use case for this, and 3 specific tasks, and there's a lot more tasks than that. Credit scoring, collector work lists, and reporting. Credit scoring, getting all the data in one place is a challenge. It's all manual, and if you get it wrong, and what this translates to is most companies are lucky if they do credit scoring on each customer at least once a year, rather than continual credit scoring, which is what should be done. The collector work list is more of a personal work list. And I used to do this. I had my own work list and I would kind of look, who should I call? And some people just made me feel real bad when I called them. So I just put it off. And it was my personal work list and nobody noticed and nothing was prioritized. It's what I thought was important. And lastly, and we know the reporting problem. It's just hard. You don't have the visibility. You don't have the insights because it takes so long to generate the report. And if you replace that with a system that employs artificial intelligence and groups all the data together, it actually sits on top of the ERP. You can have automatic credit scoring. That's an ongoing process that's updated from the credit bureaus, that's updated based on the experience in the company. And you can have them automatically categorized using AI into risk categories. The collector work list is maintained based on what the system says is most important. I get my credit work list and my collector work list in the morning, and I just use it. And I can't dodge it. I can't, oh, those people, I really don't want to call them. Nobody really sees this. It'll be flagged and my manager will see that I'm not calling those people. And then lastly, of course, with automation comes the reporting and the improved visibility and asking for reports rather than having to create the reports at the same time. And so those are the enhancements that happen. And if you think about the process, and we're really talking about, digital transformation, just kind of digitally transforming finance. And this was a study done by, talk about early digital adopters. Who are they? They're businesses that have started adopting digital finance systems like ERP and financial software like we provide, self-service portals, anything to help automate the processes. And 40% of the companies fall into that. They are working on that. And you start by transitioning to the cloud because that kind of makes information more universal. And then you adopt powerful technologies like we have at High Radius that sit on top of ERP and then kind of add more intelligence to the ERP through artificial intelligence. And our accounts receivable product, if you think about it, it sits between the bank. One aspect of it sits between the bank and the ERP application. And it takes the bank's collection and it matches them all up with the open accounts receivable and it posts it to the accounts receivable system in the ERP. That's one of the things it does. When you do this, then you start having a defined process that you can benchmark, and then you can course correct. You can make it better. And along the topic of ditching the spreadsheet, I would just like to throw out there that you cannot, if you're thinking about digitally transforming finance, right? You can't digitally transform finance without dealing with all the spreadsheets that are out there. You've got to get rid of those as well, where they fit into this subsystem category. And again, that's what we do at High Radius in the accounts receivable process. And so you do this, what happens? Why is it important? And these are the benefits of it, right? That you don't get when you have all this in a spreadsheet because you're spending so much time cobbling things together. So first, you empower your workforce with the right tools. You give them stuff so they can do, spend less time in the mechanics and more time in the doing. And these are just information from studies we've seen. This is, from PricewaterhouseCoopers, and time that could be automated for by FTE for each of these functions. Credit management function, you can save 28%. Customer billing, you can cut off 26%, and financial reporting, you can cut off another 26%. And the interesting thing is, the people doing the work know this, right? 73% of the employees say they know of systems or technology that would help them do it. It's just, this needs to bubble up to management so you can get those systems in and do better. What you're doing is you're making it easier for them to be productive. And you have tools like workflow automation. So, it isn't a matter of emails going back and forth. You're controlling the process. Unified portals for customers. It increases customer satisfaction. Let them do things on their own rather than having to call somebody to talk to them. Digital social hubs, chat tools. One of my favorite is the work lists that the system provides. It looks at your accounts receivable. It looks at who's delinquent every day, and it comes up with a work list for who to follow up with on collections, right? That all of a sudden makes it easier. I don't have to first analyze anything. I can just do it. And then the key is what you're doing with these tools is you're creating capacity for those employees to focus on more strategic tasks. And the magic number that PwC comes up with is 19%. Doing this provides 19% more time for analyzing data versus gathering the data. Now, I characterize that, when you start to think about digital transformation in the overall accounts receivable process, it's like looking at ants, right? First you see one, and the more you look, the more you see. In accounts receivable, you can think about automating one piece, then you quickly realize that they're all connected. HighRadius, just a general thing about HighRadius, they analyze problems from something called a first principle thinking perspective. And that perspective is about going back to square one and asking questions about everything and challenging everything. If you Google it, you'll find a reference to Elon Musk. And the example is when he was starting with the SpaceX program, he talked to NASA. He found out they were getting rid of stage 1 and stage 2. They were dropping them in the ocean. And he said, we save a lot of money if we do that. And so, that's what HighRadius did. And that's why they came out with these applications. You wouldn't, credit is credit. We got to do a credit rating, but it really includes a lot of different pieces. The online credit application, don't have them fill it out in paper, and you can have them fill it out while you're still in the sales process and close to close. This usually takes weeks after the fact to get done. And credit bureau integration, so you don't have to get the data first, you already have it. The automatic credit scoring, the credit workflow, just managing that whole credit process here. The EIPP cloud, which is electronic invoicing processing, gets involved with, give them a portal so they can go in and get their bills using invoice templates, automatic dunning, dispute management, and a payment gateway so they can pay it with an ACH payment online rather than a manual check. Cash application for those payments that do go through the bank. The cash application, think of this in Excel. Cash applications cash comes in a lot of different ways. You got the remittance advice. Some of it is a report. You have to do what we call OCR, optical character recognition. Then you apply AI because it's almost, a lot of those payments are like the dog ate my homework. I don't have everything. We get it via email, EDI, web data capture, a lot of different ways to get it in. And we do invoice matching. And then we do deduction coding for those companies in the consumer packaged good industry. So we flag deductions early so you can take advantage, so you can follow up with them. And then, the deductions cloud, just for managing all those deductions. There's a number of pieces in there that are automated, that are, shortages, prices, variances, and then collection cloud for following up and people who owe you money. And so those are the pieces, and these are the typical improvements we see, again, from getting out of that accounts receivable subsystem in Excel or in spreadsheets. And the business value is increased working capital. DSO goes down, days sales outstanding. Cost optimization, you're using less people. You've increased those people's efficiencies. They're not working on the mechanics of spreadsheets. The customer experience is better. You have a customer portal. And the employee experience is better because they don't feel like they're doing dumb spreadsheet work. And these are the typical improvements that we see. 5 to 20% reduction in DSO and days sales outstanding. OpEx, operating expense reduction, because, and in some cases, and we'll talk about, 80% first time cash processing rate. This is where we automate cash applications. So we take the remittance advice, we balance it to the bank statement, and we apply it to the open invoices based on artificial intelligence. And we save 80% of the people who used to do that manually. They're no longer needed. That's where we get the overall efficiency from. Elimination of the bank key-ins. Some companies have banks that key in their payments. 20 to 40% reduction in bad debts. Why? Because you have a defined collection process that you know what's going on and it's followed. And a 40 to 60% reduction in the in the time to do credit reviews because it's ongoing. Those are the kind of benefits you see when everything is in one cohesive, intelligent system on top of your ERP. And with that, Amy, if we could push the poll. Amy?
Here it
There we
goes.
go.
It was a little delay.
Sure. And at the same time, we will, open it up for questions. If you can post them in the Q&A or the chat, we'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
Yes, it's been very quiet today. I really liked how you talked about empowering your workforce with the right tools. And I feel like all of the solutions today can just really help empower their workforce, take away that manual time-consuming process, give them information at their fingertips, which we're all looking for, as well as, having 19% more time. That's a huge savings. I think that just helps also boost employee morale. Like, who wants to do all those manual things anyway?
Right. And everybody, right, fits in, everything we talked about today fits into that third use case category, right? Specific subsystems grow out of needs, and then you rely on them, and you push them and the wheels fall off, right? I didn't even, I don't even include budgeting in the third subsystem, because there's systems out that do that. There's a whole discipline called EPM and financial planning that does that. So, the wheels fall off really quick in that area.
Yes. So we have a couple of people who would see benefiting from this. So that's great.
Yep. And I should add too, when you think about artificial intelligence, people talk about it in terms of, it's like this magic blanket you throw over everything. And it's not. It is applied on a use case by use case basis. I talked about optical character recognition. That's a form of AI that takes a picture that looks like letters and converts it to letters. Applying cache is a series of layers of artificial intelligence, because some cache is easy to apply. You got a good invoice number and you got a good amount. Great, apply it. Solves 50% of the problem. Then you got another program that looks at, we have partial numbers. That may handle 5% of the problem. Then you got another program that really digs into it in another way by taking amounts and mashing different amounts together to come up with a total. That may handle another 2%. And you can see my numbers are going down, but it's a series of use cases you apply to solve the problem. It's not a blanket magic dust solution.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Rick. If there's any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A section, and we will certainly answer them. For anybody on the team that's still here, from Data Courage or Dynamic Budgets or Green Shades or High Radius, you can certainly ask those now, and we can certainly also get back to you at a later date. And as I mentioned, all of this information will be sent in an email with the link to the recording. So you can share that with your team and review maybe parts you've missed or want to see again. All right. So if there's no questions, we can certainly wrap things up. Thanks everyone for joining us today for Ditch the Spreadsheets Day. I really, truly appreciate it. Thanks to all of you ISVs who participated and presented today. I really, truly appreciate you joining me and sharing all the ways people can save time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Camille. Thank you, Tracy. Have a great day, everyone. And again, I'll send you the recording, so stay tuned for that. Thanks, everyone.